Hey everyone, I'm back with another video, and this one is going to be, I'm going to show you how I mixed drums for my retro rock and roll channel, which is a channel that I started recently in which I showcase and original artists and we do cover songs as well. And we do it here in our living room home studio. And this song is a cover of Judas Priest, Breaking the Law. And I want to show you how I did the drums. I'm going to just focus on the drums here. We use E drums, and I'll show you how I take the E drums and I mix it to try to make them sound as real as possible. This is my method. This is how I approach it. I'm sure there's many other ways. I'm sure there's probably better ways. But I want to show you how I do it. And maybe this is something that will help you, or maybe you can pick up something from this video that will help you in your mixes as well. Okay, so also what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all of these multi-tracks available for you to download on my Patreon page. I'll put the link in the description box. So if you would like to download them and mix them and do a remix or just follow along, and you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so let me play a little bit of the song, just a snippet, and then I'll just play the drums, and then we'll get right into it. Here we go.
Completely wasting, out of work and down.
Okay, cool. And now I'm just going to mute, well, not mute, but I'm just going to solo the drums, and just so you can kind of hear them. Here we go. Okay, cool. And let's get started. So first, let me show you all the tracks that I actually use. Okay, so let's go over here. And we're going to start with 3 kicks. So I have 3 kicks, and you notice that these are actual audio files of the MIDI that I captured from the E drums. So I captured the MIDI using Superior Drummer 3, and then from there I export it as audio files, and then I bring it back into the session. So this right here, this kick 1, if you notice over here, it says kick in. So that would be the kick in of the MIDI track. So in Superior Drummer 3, you get kick in, kick out, and here, let me show you. Let's bring this in so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. All right, so in Superior Drummer 3, so you get a kick in, a kick out, and a kick sub. So you get 3 different tracks. I only use kick in, and I actually use a sample of it. So let me just get rid of that. Let me just close this up. And what I do is I'll just mute it, and I'll leave it here just so you can kind of, if I need to refer to it later on. And then I use a sample, which I'll get to in a few minutes. I'll show you the samples that I use. But what I do is I duplicate this kick track. Let me just take that out for a second. This kick track, I duplicate it twice. So then I have 3 kicks. If you notice, it's the exact same audio file. See, kick in, and kick in. And then I use the input gain or the clip gain to kind of bring it up to a healthy level, because I think this is how it looked on Superior Drummer, which is really too low for me. But because it's not sample, because it's a MIDI file and I record in 24-bit, I can really pump it up, and it really won't affect the noise floor. So let me bring that back up. And then I duplicate this track into 3. Okay. Then my snare top. If you notice here, the snare top, that's just again from Superior Drummer 3. I don't use snare bottoms. I just I delete, I just get rid of it. And I duplicate this 3 times as well. So I have a snare top, but this snare top here, I'm going to place a snippet of it. That's actually the sound of Superior Drummer 3. And then again, I'm going to break this down in a few minutes. But then here where I label it snare 1, this is my first sample, and this is my second sample. Okay, then I have my toms. I have 2 rack toms. Here's where they are played. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, I'm just going to solo just the toms. All right. And if you want to hear how the whole thing sounds, here we go. Okay. So I have 2 racks, and then I have a floor tom. And my floor tom is right here. The drummer only played a couple of times. And let's see how that sounds. Okay, that's the build up in the middle of the song before it goes into the main riff again. Okay. Then I have a hi-hat, overhead, and then here I have a ride. And again, this comes from my Superior Drummer 3. All right. And then here, this is something that I add. These are actual samples. These are crash samples. I have a 17-inch crash and an 18-inch crash. So I actually go through each crash of the overheads, and then I just sample a crash over it. I feel like the crashes on the overheads or on the E drums, they're not as strong. Let me see if I can find one. Actually, right here in the beginning. Okay, I'm going to solo the overhead just so you can kind of hear the crashes, and then I'll bring in the first the 17-inch crash. Okay. All right, so here's the first right there. Okay, let me actually do this so you can kind of see it better. Let me unmute the groups. Okay, so here's the first crash. Okay, and then what I do is I put an it's a sample crash here. So together it would sound like this. Okay. And then if I play the whole drum set with the sample here, it sounds like this. If I were to mute that, it would sound like this. See, it sounds low and it's not like in your face. So that's just something I do to kind of help the drums and the cymbals. Okay, what else do I do? And then here, let me go back to this. And then here I have this is my room. And so these are all my audio tracks, okay, that I actually bring in from Superior Drummer 3. So I'll show you just one more time. Okay, here are my MIDIs. Okay, my MIDI tracks. Here are all the tracks that I bounce. Okay, and if you have Superior Drummer 3 and you want to see what I use the Premiere default. So it's a clean kit because I don't want any processing. So if you know a little bit about Superior Drummer 3, you know that if you choose, let's say like a pop rock or actually like a metal heavy rock, right? You choose one of these, you'll get a lot of plugins, effects. But if you go to the clean kit and you choose one of these, you don't get any effects at all. So that's what I do because I have more control of the mix later. And then after I capture the MIDI, I bounce or I export the audio files. And when I export the audio files, I actually just and I do it at 24-bit. And what I do is I actually get the microphones, like pretend that, see, I bounce each microphone channel pre-mixer. So basically pretend that these channels are actual mics on a real drum set. And then I just bounce it here, and then I mix it, and I treat this as if this was coming from a real drum set. Okay, now that we get that out of the way, now let's look at my mix. Okay, so let's go over here, and first let's start with the first kick. All right. Let's take a listen to it. Okay, cool. So I use a lot of samples, and I use trigger too. Okay. And the sample that I use is JW Kick, and this is from Joe Wanasek pack. I'll show you a quick up on the screen. You can see where I get it from. So this is the Joe Wanasek kick, and it sounds like this. So that is my bass, or that is my like the first kick. And then what I do there, I use a Waves SSL channel. This is my go-to EQ compression. EQ compressor. This is my go-to channel strip. I use this on almost every channel strip, whether it's bass, vocals, guitars, what have you. And let's see what I'm doing here. All right. I'm cutting out a lot. Look, high passing at 70. Okay. And let's go from bottom, like low frequencies, all the way up. Then I have, if you notice, on 60, I have a 9 dB boost here. Even though I'm cutting it at 70 because of the slope of this EQ, you're still getting a bump there. So I'm actually bumping 9 dB. So it kind of looks like that. If you look at if this was a graphic EQ, and you can kind of see it, not graphic, a parametric. So it works. It works for me. And I think it sounds good. Okay, next, about 250. I'm just taking out all that low end to make it sound like that modern kick. Okay? And I'm taking out 12 dB, and it's a very narrow Q. Okay, what else am I doing here? I am boosting at 1.5, boosting 3, and then at 8K, I'm boosting 1.6. Okay. And I am not. Am I using a compressor here? I think so. Let me see. Yeah. So I do the. I use the channel out over here. Okay. And then here I have 3-to-1, and I'm only doing about 3 dB gain reduction. Okay, cool. And then here, okay. This one's a little bit odd. I started using this recently. So basically what I'm doing here, this is very similar to the channel strip that I showed you, but I'm so used to using the old Waves SSL channel that I mean, I could probably replicate what I did here, but all I'm doing here is giving this thump here, this 2 dB thump. Okay. Let's see how this sounds, okay, before and after. Okay, it's subtle, but it's adding a little bit more of like umph and like a little low end punch there. All right, cool. Let's go to the second. Let's go to the second kick here, okay? And here I am using Billy Decker's Savage Kick sample. And it sounds like this. Cool. I'm not doing any processing at all. So together with the first kick, it sounds like this. Let's get rid of this. And then here is my kick 3. Okay. And what am I doing here? Okay. This is my dance kick. Okay. I have a video in which I go over this. I found this this sample. It was like a free sample that I found online. I remember watching a video where they were showing how adding a dance kick to modern music kind of gives it a little bit more punch. So I was like, oh, cool. So I looked around online and I found this dance kick. And what I do is I'll offer this dance kick on my Patreon page. So if you want it, you can download it. I mean, I found it free, so if you search for it, you probably can find it. Dance kick, G sharp major, and it sounds like this. Cool. So then together, all 3 kicks sound like this. Okay. And whenever you adding samples or like you're stacking samples, always check the phase. And check for the phase to make sure that the low end doesn't go away. Okay. I can show you here real quick. Let's see. See how the low end goes away? Sometimes it sounds good. So you're just going to have to play around with it. But I like how this sits in the mix. Okay, cool. So that's it for my kicks. Let's start with snare. Okay, and this is my snare top. I'll talk about the routing after I go through each channel, okay? All right, there is a flam there at the beginning, so I want to get rid of that. Let's start it from here. Here's my snare. Let's start it from here. Okay. So all right, so what do I do here? Okay, here I have a gate, but it's bypassed. It's bypassed because this is a MIDI snare, so there's no bleed. But I have it here because this is part of my template. So if I were mixing like real drums and a real snare, I would then add this and mess around with the gate and try to get rid of the bleed. Okay. Then I have my SSL channel, and let's see what I'm doing to it. Okay, 150 high pass. And I'm also doing a low pass at 5K. Okay. Then over here, nothing, even though the bell is on. I'm not doing any boost at 200. But at 700, I'm doing a almost 6 dB boost. Then at 4.5, nothing. And then at 8K, I'm doing 5 dB boost. Okay, let's do it before and after. Okay. To be honest, without it, kind of sounds beefier and heavier. But again, I want this to just be like a sizzle and a crack. So that's why it sounds a little thin, but when with the other samples, it fits nicely. So remember, sometimes a track by itself may sound better, but then you have to think in the context of the whole mix, or in this case, the drum set or the drum mix. Okay, and then I'm adding a little lo-fi here. Okay, and the only thing I'm doing is I'm bumping the distortion, add a little saturation here. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, cool. And then here I have my sense, and again, I'm going to talk about this at the end. All right, cool. Now let's start looking at the first sample. And then here, I'm using the Savage snare, Billy Decker's Savage snare, okay? And it sounds like this. And that is really the sound of my snare, Okay, I love the sound of that snare. And what am I doing to it? Okay, let's see. I have a low pass at 8. And then at 200, I am boosting 10 dB. Then at 300, I am boosting about 2. Then I have another boost at 4.5, 2.5 dB. And then at 5K, I'm boosting almost 9 dB. Okay. And then I have 3 to 1. Okay. And here I have fast attack. I'm sorry, a slow attack and fast release. Let's see how this sounds. Before and after. Okay, so you hear adding some weight to it. Okay, cool. Then I have another snare sample here. And here I'm using the Sledge Snare Direct. I don't know where I got this from, to be honest. But let's see how it sounds. Okay, kind of sounds similar to this one, right? Actually, no, it doesn't. But it has like that. And it has like that little, like, again, it has like a crack, kind of like a thin crack there. So if you notice, this snare here is really my beef, and then these two supplements around it. Okay? And if you notice how I'm mixing it here, okay, this is the one that I really like focusing on. But let's see how it sounds, all three of them together. Yeah, I'm always going for that big bombastic snare, like that Def Leppard stadium rock drum set that just like gives it a big punch. That's what I like. Let's look at the toms. Okay, and I'll do this quickly because I don't want this video to be too long. All right, let's find some toms. All right, there are some here. Okay, let's look at this roll right here. All right, and let's start first with tom 1. All right, and here what I'm doing is I'm using the Joe Wanasek rack toms set or sample packs, but I'm doing something a little bit different. Look at my mix. It's at 39%. It's not at full. Okay, so if it's at full, that means that you're just hearing this. And let me play it. And if I bring the mix down all the way, then you're hearing the original, which happens to be the Superior Drummer 3. But sometimes I play around with this until I get something that I like a nice blend. And I do the same thing with real toms. Okay. Then I have a silencer here. This is from Black Salt Audio. And basically what I'm doing here is I don't want that decay to be really long. So if I bypass it, listen to the decay. So you hear that decay like that. Woo. And if I use this, okay, it's shorter. Okay, then this is the key right here. All right, why am I using a Pro Tools native plugin? I don't know. I think what I was doing once, and I also saw Billy Decker doing this. So, but once I was recording in the studio, and I wanted to use plugins that didn't use a lot of DSP power. I think that's what it's called, DSP. And these plugins or this EQ is great for that. And I think I just left it. And I like what I'm doing here. So let's take a look. Filters, 30 hertz. Take out the low end rumble. But look at my slope. My slope is 24 dB per octave. So that's a really steep slope. And you can kind of see here. And then at 8K, I'm getting rid of all this top end here. All right. And at 500, I am taking out 18 dB. And then at 1K, I'm taking out 6. So you see this really big dip. Okay. And let's see how this sounds. So you get that modern tom sound. And then I'm using a JST clipper. This is just to give it a little bit more volume and weight and kind of like put it up more front and in your face. And then for tom 2 and then tom 3, it's the same thing in terms of what I'm using. I'm using the mid-rack tom by Joe Wanasek, and then the floor tom by Joe Wanasek. And then I pretty much copy the settings here. So they're all the same settings. Okay. All right, cool. Let's move on. Let's look at the hat. Okay. The hat is an electronic hat. And this is, to me personally, this is where E-drums is not there yet. I don't think. I think this is the weakness or the downfall of E-drums is the hat. I've been messing around with trying to use a real hat along like a hybrid kit, and I may explore that, and if I get good results, I'll make do a video. But for now, this is the hat that I'm getting from the E-kit, and then this is the sample from Superior Drummer 3, and it sounds like this. Okay, and then you see over here how I'm boosting it like 13 dB. And what I'm doing here. Okay, here I'm using a Metro Halo channel strip. And this I got from Billy Decker. And I even created a preset called BD Hat. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in using presets. And there's no shame in either emulating, your favorite mixing engineers. And Billy Decker is one of my favorites. So I tend to model after his style. All right, and let's see what's going on here. Okay, now this is, to be honest, this EQ, it takes some getting used to. But let me break it down here in case you don't have it and you want to use another EQ. That's cool. Okay, and I'm just using the EQ here. I'm not using anything else. So you can ignore all of this and then just focus on this over here. And then you can also see here the graphics. Okay. So here I am at 183. Okay. I have a filter here, high pass. Okay, see this little 6 right here. So if I turn this off, see, turn it back on. Okay, then here I have this is a curve, like not a curve, like a bell. And at 830, I'm taking out almost 7 dB. See that? Okay. Then over here at 9.5K, I have a little bump. See right there? And then that's it. Okay, let's do it before and after. Okay. I think I use this more for like real hi-hats where it has a lot of bleed. But still, I like that top end kind of like sizzle that it adds. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Now we have, sorry. Let's do this. Now we have the overheads. Okay. And then here, let's see how it sounds. Okay, I am getting a lot of kick there. Kick and snare. All right. So what am I doing here? I'm using a preset. I'm using CLA overhead 2. And let's see what I'm doing here. Here at 450, bumping 3. Here 2.5K. Nothing here. And then a little boost on 8K here. Like 3 dB. Okay, let's do it quick before and after. Okay. All right. And then that's it. And then I have a ride here. Let's talk about the ride real quick. There's a ride right here. All right. And what am I doing here? I'm taking out high pass, about 300. And then I'm using soothe. I think I'm using soothe here. And then I'm using cymbal smooth here because it sounded a little harsh. Let's see how it sounds. Yeah, it does what it's called. It smooths it out, okay, or it soothes it. And finally, I have here the room, okay, and let's see how this sounds. All right, and let's see what I'm doing here. Okay, I have an L2, and the reason I have this L2 is because I want to get rid of the snare. Although I could have done it in Superior Drummer, like the bleed, but again, I want to treat it like real drums. So if you notice, when I play this, you're going to see that it's kind of ducking out the snare. See, between 3 and 6 dB. Okay, that's all this is doing. Then I have a little lo-fi here, adding a little bit of saturation, a little bit of distortion. Cool. And then my channel here. Let's see what I'm doing here. I'm using the filters. Okay, I'm using high pass at 100, low pass at 10K. And what am I? Nothing here. Here, minus 1 dB at 2. Taking out that low end, that 200. That kind of like the low end build up there. And that's it. I don't think I'm using any compressor here. Very subtle. All right. And that's it for my audio tracks. Now let's talk about my bus. How do I bus this? All right. So these are all my audio tracks. These are my actual like microphone on a shell or cymbals or room. All right. And then I break it down into 2 sections. My shells and my cymbals. Okay, so think of them as 2 sections or 2 parts. So let's look at my shells and where they're going. My shells are going to a drum bus. Okay, I send them all to a drum bus, which is right here. This is my drum bus, and then my drum bus goes to the 2 bus, the mix. And then my cymbals, they don't go to a bus. They go straight to the mix. So it's bypassing the drum bus. All right, so let's look at the shells first. Okay, so all of these are going to my drum bus right here. And let's see what I'm doing in my drum bus. First, I have a SSL compressor, and I'm using the punch preset. And here, what I'm trying to do is I just want to do about 2 dB or so. When it does a tom roll, it'll get a little bit more. But no, I really just want to go for about 2 dB. So let me just solo out the drums and just look over here. Again, the only thing that is going in here, this drum bus, let me put it over here. This drum bus right here are my shells from here to here. Okay, then I'm using, this is a Crane song. This is a Phoenix 2 by Crane song. This is a tape emulator, just adding saturations. Okay, I'm using the iridescent. Did I say that right? Iridescent, yeah. Which kind of sounds a little dark, but not really. And then I'm processing almost half here. Okay. And then finally here, I'm using this. This is like the JST clipper, but this is by BS Audio, Black Soul Audio. And here I'm just doing like the 3 lights here, even though there's more lights here. But I put it at 3, and to me it sounds good. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's my drum bus. All right. However, I'm doing some more processing here. And if you look over here, right over here, I'm sending my snare top, my snare, my 2 sample snares, and my 3 toms. I'm sending into this bus called crush, which is right here. Okay, this is my crush bus. So let's look at what I'm doing here in the crush bus. Here I have an SSL SSL bus, and here I'm hitting between 12 and 16, especially the snare. Take a listen. And that's giving me that smack. Okay, even though I have it kind of low here, it's still giving me a nice smack there. Okay. Then I'm boosting here 200 and then 15K. Cool. And then I have the clipper, okay, by Black Salt Audio. And that is my crush. And then I blend it to taste. I don't want to go over it too much. So I blend it to taste. Okay. And what I'm sending there, I'm sending all my snares and my toms. I don't say my kick, because if I do, then my kick becomes too woofy. Okay. Then I have here a plate. Okay. And this is my reverb. And I'm sending my snares and also my toms. I add some reverb to my toms too. And that is over here. Okay. And again, like I adjust it to taste. And what I'm doing here is I'm using, this is Steven Slate's reverb, the Verb Suite Classics. And I'm using, this is the Percasti. I think it was like an old reverb that was going around online, but now it's called the FG BM7. And I'm using the plate 1 and snare plate B. Okay. And let's see how it sounds before and after. Okay, I'll just mute it and bring it back. Okay, cool. And then finally, I'm using a gate. And the gate I'm only using on the snare. See right here, these 3. And then here what I'm doing is I'm using this Valhalla room. And I'm using a preset, the medium gate. And if you notice, I don't have it pan left and right. I kind of bring it up a little bit more centered. Okay. And I'm only using a little bit. This is something that I got from Jordan Valeriot. And it kind of stuck, and I've been using it ever since. It's very subtle. You might not be able to hear it. But sometimes I will bring it up if the snare is not cutting through the mix. I'll bring this up a little bit more. Okay, let's do it before and after. See, so it's adding a little bit of weight to it. All right, cool. So that is how I mixed the drums for this song. And again, if you want these multi-tracks, if you want all of them, all the multi-tracks, vocals, guitars, drums, and remember, this was a live performance, so no overdubs, nothing. I mean, I did editing, like cleanup and things like that. As you can see, the vocals here I cleaned up to kind of get rid of the bleed of the plastic sounds of the E drums. And I did clean up like the bass and the guitars here. So I do a lot of cleanup, and I do a little bit of tuning on the vocals. Like I use this waves. I just throw it in there and I just leave it. It's very subtle. It just kind of helps with the pitch. But as far as performance, it's one take from beginning to end. No punch-ins, no dubs, nothing. So if you want all of these multi-tracks, okay, you can head over to my Patreon page and you can download download them there. And I'll be doing more videos. I'll do a full tutorial of how I mix everything. You would offer, if you use Pro Tools, I'll offer my mix template. Just reach out to me on Patreon. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And until next time, happy mixing.